This is another podcast from Alpha Business Media. Imagine this for a moment. You wake up, go about your day, but you know that when the sun goes down, your world just shrinks. Semi-darkness. That was reality for years for Pabitra Giri, a widow in Kharbang village, western Nepal, just relentless farm work all day. And then evenings. Squinting by a flickering, smoky kerosene lamp, her kids trying to do homework like that. You can picture the strain. And this wasn't unusual. Across Nepal, 18-hour power outages were, well, almost normal. Daily life just paralyzed.
It really was a harsh reality for millions.
Yeah.
Just fundamentally limiting.
But then for Pabitra, things changed completely. A local micro-hydropower plant fired up.
Suddenly, steady light.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Bright light. Her kids could actually study properly. They could power simple appliances. And maybe even more importantly, that stability let Pabitra and other women in her cooperative start a small soap-making business. Stable income.
And that's the core point, isn't it? It goes way beyond just having light bulbs. It touches dignity, opportunity, prosperity.
Absolutely. So how did electricity unlock all that for her and really for so many others across Nepal? Because her story, while powerful, it's part of this much bigger picture. Nepal's energy breakthrough. I mean, we're talking one of the fastest electrification rates anywhere. Think about this. Back in 2000, rural access was less than 35%.
Dismal, really.
Right. But by 2023, it jumped to 93.4%.
Mhm.
Overall national coverage hit 94%. That's staggering progress.
It truly is remarkable.
And what's so fascinating is how it happened. Not giant power plants, not some massive central plan.
No, quite the opposite.
It was grassroots, decentralized, built on local solutions. So our mission today is to unpack that. How did Nepal basically leapfrog from kerosene straight to renewables? What was the innovation in tech, in governance, finance, policy that lit up the Himalayas? We're calling it the Nepal Leap. I mean, how does a country go from 18-hour blackouts to almost universal access? What were the key drivers here?
Well, you really nailed the core of it. It stands on two main pillars, you can say. First, you've got the power harnessed from all those small mountain streams. That's the micro-hydropower piece. And second, the power of the sun, captured by solar panels that became much more affordable over time.
Okay, streams and sun.
Exactly. And crucially, communities didn't just sit back and wait for the national grid, which might have taken decades, if ever, to reach them. They took initiative. They built their own systems, flexible, resilient, local energy systems.
So it was driven from the ground up.
Very much so. A social and economic shift, not just technological.
Let's put some numbers on that scale again. You mentioned 94% overall access.
Yeah, and get this. Over 11,300 micro-hydro plants are running now, serving about 35,000 households.
11,000. That's incredible. Tiny power stations everywhere.
Precisely. Community-driven projects.
Yeah.
Plus, you have over 8,300 households using solar systems just under the main government program, AEPC. And the government's aiming high. They want 100% electrification by 2025 or 2026.
Wow. Ambitious?
Very. But look how far they've come.
Okay, let's dive into that first pillar then. The power of small rivers. Sounds lovely, but practically. How do these micro-hydro plants, these SHPs, actually work? And why were they such a good fit for Nepal?
Right. So in Nepal, micro-hydro usually means small installations, typically between 10 and 100 kilowatts.
Yeah.
They just use the natural flow and drop of the thousands of small rivers and streams coming off the Himalayas. There's just so much potential there.
Abundant resource.
Exactly. But it's not just the tech. It's this whole ecosystem they built around it, what they call the Nepal model.
The Nepal model. Okay, unpack that.
So the state plays a role, but more as a catalyst. Through the Alternative Energy Promotion Center, the AEPC, set up back in '96, AEPC doesn't build the plants themselves. They do the groundwork. Feasibility studies, providing subsidies or grants, crucially, training local people to run and maintain the plants, and ensuring quality control.
Okay, so enabling, not just imposing.
Precisely. But the real engine, the secret sauce, is community ownership. Villagers get involved right from the start. They contribute labor, often for free, help raise funds, and then they form committees to manage and operate their plant.
Ah, so they literally build it and run it.
Yes. And that creates incredibly low running costs, but more importantly, long-term sustainability, because they see it as theirs. It's their asset.
That makes perfect sense. Let's make this concrete. The case of Kharbang you mentioned earlier. A 51-kilowatt plant, 700 households, launched in 2009. You said it caused an economic explosion.
It really did. Before the plant, economically, not much was happening. But within just 4 years, 22 new businesses popped up.
22, from basically zero.
Pretty much. Furniture makers, metal workshops, poultry farms, dairy farms, even a noodle factory.
A noodle factory, powered by a small river. I love that.
It's fantastic, isn't it? And these are real lives changing. Like Lakshmi Rasali, a young woman who started a chicken farm and butcher shop. She said flat out, I couldn't have done this without electricity. Or two brothers, Lagogup and Jug Bahadur Kunwar. They moved there specifically to set up a furniture workshop. Now they employ 7 people. They use electric machines, so the quality is better, designs are more complex.
So it's lighting homes, yes, but it's also powering lathes and noodle machines. It really ripples out. What are those broader impacts then across the country?
Oh, they're huge. First, jobs and income. Mechanization is a big one. Electric rice mills, sawmills replace back-breaking manual labor. It extends the working day for shops, creates totally new services. Think mobile phone repairs, printing shops. Studies show over 75% of people in electrified villages report higher incomes.
75%, that's significant.
Definitely. Then there's women's empowerment. Think about grinding grain by hand for hours every day. Electric mills free up massive amounts of women's time.
Time they can use.
Education, social activities, childcare, maybe tending a small garden business. It really boosts their economic independence.
Makes sense. And education, healthcare?
Big impacts there, too. Kids can actually study effectively at night with bright, safe light. Schools can get computer labs. Rural health clinics can operate 24/7, use modern equipment. Crucially, refrigerate vaccines. Life-saving stuff.
Absolutely.
And finally, just overall quality of life improves. Access to information, TV, internet, safer streets at night with lighting, better public health because you're not breathing kerosene fumes, and even environmental benefits. Less pressure on forests for firewood.
Okay, so micro-hydro was a powerhouse where the geography worked, but Nepal has high plateaus, arid plains, places without those small rivers. What was the answer there? What became the sort of universal tool?
That's where solar really shines, literally. Its huge advantage is versatility. You can install solar panels almost anywhere there's sunlight. High plateaus, dry plains, super remote settlements, places where running power lines or digging hydro canals just isn't feasible economically or technically.
Right, solar can go where hydro can't.
Exactly, it fills those gaps. And Nepal has been smart about using different types of solar solutions. You've got the basic solar home systems, often small, maybe just 10 watts, but enough for lights and charging a phone. These were huge for rapidly increasing basic access numbers.
Just getting a light in every home?
Pretty much. Then you scale up to solar mini-grids. These are more powerful, can power a whole village or key facilities like schools and clinics, creating local energy hubs. And then there are really innovative applications like solar water pumps.
Ah, tell me about those.
These are fantastic because they tackle 3 problems at once: energy, water, and food security. They use solar power to pump water for drinking and, critically, for irrigation.
Game changer for agriculture in dry areas.
Huge. And finally, you have institutional systems dedicated solar power for essential places like hospitals and schools, ensuring they always have power.
And this solar push got significant backing too, right? I think I saw mention of a $20 million World Bank grant.
Yes, there's been substantial support. And a key shift in thinking, moving beyond just providing basic light to creating systems that actually help generate income.
Right, like the water pumps for irrigation.
Exactly. The pilot project in Tingher village, down south, is a brilliant example of this integrated approach. They built a 40-kilowatt solar plant, 74 panels. But it's not just feeding lights. It powers a pump pulling water from a well into a big reservoir. That water is filtered, then sent to homes for drinking and into an irrigation system.
Okay, so energy and water sorted.
But here's where it gets really clever. Agrivoltaic.
Agrivoltaics, combining agriculture and solar.
Precisely. The land underneath the tall solar panels isn't wasted. They're using it to grow vegetables, fruit, flowers. They've got lemons going and plan to grow dragon fruit for the market.
Wow. So the solar panels provide power and shade for crops. That's smart.
It's incredibly efficient land use. And the results in Tingher, pretty amazing.
What did they see?
Clean drinking water for over 450 households that were really struggling with shortages. Reliable 247 power for the local school and the maternity center.
Yeah.
And, importantly, land that was basically abandoned is now productive again, giving people new ways to earn money.
So that one project hits energy, water, and food security. A triple win.
Exactly. It's a really holistic model for development.
Okay, so Nepal's powering villages with rivers and sun. But then as the country developed, the main national grids started expanding, right? Reaching into these areas that already had their own local power. That sounds like it could create, well, a problem.
It did. It was this fascinating, almost paradoxical challenge. You have these successful community-owned micro-hydro plants.
That people invested time and money into.
Exactly. And then the big national grid arrives,
Right.
maybe offering more power, a grid connection, and people started switching over.
Leaving the local plant potentially unused.
Right. Risking these community assets becoming stranded, deteriorating. It was a real threat. But this is where Nepal showed some really clever policy thinking, political adaptability.
Okay, how did they handle it?
Instead of letting it become a competition where the local plants lose out, they fostered collaboration. AEPC, the Alternative Energy Agency, worked together with the NEA, the Nepal Electricity Authority, the big grid operator. They figured out technical standards and policies to allow these small hydro plants, the SHPs, to actually connect to the national grid,
Connect to it.
to sell their surplus power back to the grid.
Ah, so the local plant becomes a mini generator for the national system.
Exactly. It created this brilliant win-win situation.
How so?
Well, for communities, suddenly their plant has a new, steady income stream from selling that extra electricity. That guarantees money for maintenance, ensures the plant stays viable long-term. It basically saved these projects.
Okay, good for the community. What about the grid?
For the national grid, it meant getting extra power generated right there in remote areas. That reduces energy losses from transmitting power over long distances, and it adds resilience and stability to the whole system.
That is clever. Turning a potential conflict into synergy. Was there a first case? A pioneer?
There was the 23-kilowatt Sierra Bumi SHP in Nuwakot district. It was built in 2013, and almost right away, the national grid line arrived nearby, posing that exact threat. But thanks to this new policy work between 2017 and 2018, it became the very first micro-hydro plant under 100 kilowatt to successfully connect and sell power to the national grid.
The test case. Did it work financially?
Absolutely. Connecting to the grid essentially saved it. They estimate the plant can export around 178,000 kilowatt hours a year. That translates to about $10,600 in annual income for the community. Huge for them.
Wow, that proves the model.
Totally. It showed it was technically possible, economically viable, and beneficial. And Sawyer Buni's success paved the way. Now you see others like the 68-kilowatt Jumsokola III plant expecting to earn its community around $1,500 a month selling surplus power.
Money they can reinvest locally.
Exactly. In schools, health, roads, whatever the community decides. It really highlights that these political and institutional innovations are just as vital as the turbines and panels.
Definitely. Okay, so amazing progress, innovative solutions, but the journey isn't quite finished. They're aiming for 100% by 2025-26. What are the big hurdles remaining? What's the challenge of the last mile?
Yeah, that last mile is always the hardest. The biggest challenge now is really geographical inequality. While most of the country is over 90% electrified, you have regions like Karnali Province, way out west, still under 50%. Just 49.63%.
Less than half. Why such a big gap?
It's incredibly tough terrain, harsh mountains, very remote, scattered settlements. The cost of building any infrastructure out there, power lines, even small hydro plants, becomes astronomically high for just a few households. It's just economically very difficult.
So the hardest to reach places are left. Makes sense. What else?
Well, there's the long-term sustainability of the existing systems. Many of those thousands of micro-hydro plants built over the last couple of decades are aging. They need maintenance. But often villages lack trained technicians locally. If a key imported part fails, like a generator or a bearing, the plant can be down for a long time waiting for parts and expertise.
Right. Keeping things running is crucial.
And related to that is efficiency. Many older plants maybe weren't perfectly optimized, and there hasn't been enough local R&D or testing centers to really drive technological improvements within Nepal itself.
Okay, so technical and maintenance issues. Any others?
Finance is still a major one. The sheer amount of investment needed to hit 100% and modernize the whole system is huge. The World Bank estimated something like $29 to $46 billion needed between 2018 and 2040.
That's a massive number. Where does it come from?
That's the challenge. The domestic financial market is limited. Banks are often hesitant about long-term loans for energy projects, seeing them as risky. The stock market isn't really developed enough to raise that kind of capital. And attracting foreign investment can be tricky too, because of things like currency risks and sometimes complex bureaucracy.
So geography, sustainability, technology gaps, and finance. Quite a list for that final push.
It is. But Nepal's strategy seems to be doubling down on what's worked. Those decentralized solutions. More small hydro, more solar, maybe wind, hybrid systems, smarter local grids, using that flexible toolkit to conquer the last mile.
Sticking with the grassroots approach that got them this far.
Seems to be the plan.
So wrapping this up, Nepal's story. It feels less like a miracle and more like, as you said, a roadmap. If you had to boil it down, what are the key principles, the big takeaways that other developing countries or maybe anyone tackling complex problems could learn from Nepal's experience?
I think there are three really crucial lessons here. First is the power of decentralization and community ownership. Empowering local people, giving them responsibility and ownership of energy assets wasn't just nice, it was fundamental to making these projects stick, making them sustainable.
Right. Ownership matters. What's the second?
Technological flexibility. Nepal didn't bet on just one horse. They used a whole portfolio, micro-hydro where it made sense, solar where that made sense. Adapting the technology to the local context, not the other way around.
Using the right tool for the job, basically.
Exactly. And the third principle, which we just talked about, is political adaptability. That willingness to change the rules, to see a challenge like the grid expansion, not as a threat, but as an opportunity for collaboration. That ability to innovate institutionally was incredibly important.
So decentralize, be flexible with tech, and be ready to adapt the rules.
That really captures the essence of it, I think.
It really pushes back against the idea that only massive, top-down mega projects can solve big problems like energy access.
It absolutely does. Nepal shows that effective solutions often come from supporting local initiatives, combining technologies smartly, and creating a regulatory environment that allows for that kind of innovation and collaboration.
A powerful alternative model.
Definitely. And Nepal's journey isn't over, of course, but that innovative spirit powered by its rivers, the sun, and most importantly, its people, is genuinely lighting a path that others can learn from. Because ultimately, energy isn't just about kilowatt hours, is it? It's foundational. It's about human dignity, education, health, economic opportunity, everything.
A fantastic final thought. So for you listening, here's something to mull over. How could these principles, decentralization, tech flexibility, political adaptability, apply to challenges you see, maybe in your community, your field, not just energy? What last-mile problems could use a similar grassroots adaptive approach? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Nepal's remarkable energy journey. We hope it sparks some ideas, and we encourage you to explore more about these kinds of decentralized solutions.